Well, hello there. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you are here. Happy May Day. Happy Scorpio flower full moon. Happy Beltane. Although Beltane's not technically for a couple more days. It's when the sun passes the midpoint of the sign of Taurus, so we got a couple more days. But regardless, let's just call it what it is. Happy Beltane, right? Where we dance around the maypole. So happy all of these things. And welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. So in this full moon forecast, which is the focus of this video, we're going to look at the main astrological themes for the 2 weeks ahead of our full moon today, which is, as I said, a Scorpio full moon. And it feels like so much time has passed since the new moon because so many things have already transpired or developed or shook us from the new moon up until now with this full moon, right? And so now we're here at this full moon and the full display of what is generated in terms of our relationships is being, it's being illuminated for us right now with this full moon. So we're going to talk about the general trends, the astrological themes for the next 2 weeks. Some people might be thinking, Mayday, Mayday, the ship is going down. And I will say that if you just pick any area of life, whether it's public, whether it's private and personal, right? Economic, financial, it could be cultural, it could be social, it could be national, it could be international and global. It can have to do with the healthcare system and people's health. That's a big one right now. Man, whew. I mean, the Taurus energy really does kind of encompass the state of health for sure. But there's just a lot of that. But just pick an area of life and you'll find that something or many things have transpired or have developed or moved forward. And it just feels like so much time has passed because there's so much packed into a smaller amount of time. And so, hold fast, guys. I mean, and you think it's crazy now, just wait till we get the beginning of June. I mean, anywhere from the 6th to the 10th is going to be, as my colleague Amanda said, we've been kind of volleying back and forth around this time period because she keeps getting really strong intuitive hits about it. And then I'm looking at the charts and I'm like, yeah, and then we're collaborating. And her words were like, it's a gut punch. And there are very specific things astrologically that we'll get into a little later in the month on these forecasts. Of course, if you've had a fire horse reading or you're in the Catalyst membership, these are all areas that will either be addressed or have already been addressed. But if you're feeling like you want to get a reading or get some guidance or just get a little bit of an energetic tune-up, I'm actually offering a May Day sale where everything is 50% off of my entire store, including the beginner starseed package, which tends to be very popular. So I already sent this flyer out to my email list, right? So you guys already have access to it and you got to jump on it. It's only good until the 15th, but it is everything except for recurring membership that doesn't count towards that. However, if you do use this discount code and book a reading or energy work session, then you get a free month of premium membership when you do sign up, right? You have to actually sign up and make an account, but then you'll have another discount code that'll give you that first month for free. And then you can see if you like it, and if you don't, you just cancel. No big deal. But I am offering this May Day sale, so you would use the code Mayday 2026 at the store. The website is linked in the description box, or, if this is on social media, it'll be linked in the comments, or it's on the profile page for this social media. lots of places where you can find it, but this is 50% off. And for some of these things, it's a real steal, especially the Starseed package, because you get the natal chart, the Starseed chart reading, and then one-on-one consultation with me in real time to ask questions, to go deeper into whatever you want to do, and to have that be half off. It's less expensive than just a natal chart reading at this point. So I don't know, it's kind of a steal, and it was just my way of like, I think people really need this, and things are getting tighter right now, economically, right? We've known this for a while. I feel like Uranus making the transition out of Taurus into Gemini is a big part of this. So anyway, if you want to check it out, here's the flyer. It's on social media posted as well, and it'll be on the homepage of website catalystenergies.net. So 50% off everything May Day 2026. So what we should be doing is celebrating that there is growth and green and, things to look forward to. Things are growing. They definitely are growing. But there's also a lot of intensity happening as well. So if you want to get a jump on what's going on in early June related to your chart, because it's going to be a gut punch and a pretty, especially a longer term transit that's going to be happening, then it's going to be intense. So you might want to get a lunar transit forecast for that time period as well. So whatever, it's there if you need it. So let's move on to the actual astrology. So we are in an interesting time with this full moon, this full flower moon at the beginning of May here, because Scorpio is the domain of the planet Pluto. And one of the bigger things that's happening next to, of course, the full moon itself, is that Pluto stations retrograde by the end of next week, right, on the 6th of May. So when a planet starts to station and then comes to that still point or that 0 point before it seems to move in the other direction, it usually gets really powerful. And that certainly is no exception with Pluto. And I think its intensity is already starting to show itself with a Scorpio full moon right now. And so just be advised, I would say, that, the intensity of Scorpio, especially how we feel, right? I mean, a Scorpio moon, if you already have a Scorpio moon, then it's something that you're at least a little bit more familiar with the intensity of it, right? You're talking about fixed, still waters. And in fact, there's a ton of fixed energy right now. So that makes it feel even more like, where is there room to budge, right? Can I actually bend anymore? Because it really just feels like I'm going to break. And I know that that's really been happening since before the new moon, but it really activated with this past new moon because of the connection to Chiron. Today, as we're going to see, let's actually look at the chart because that's a really good anchor for all of us in this process. So, I'm going to share the screen. All right, I want to make sure here that we're formatted. We sure are. And this is the chart for today, May 1st, at the time of the Scorpio full moon. As you can see, the opposition is nice and clear on the chart. And so there's two things happening today. One, besides this Scorpio full moon, and I'm going to go a lot deeper into the symbolism around the degrees, right? The Sabian symbols of where the sun is in Taurus and where the full moon is in Scorpio, and really unpack that because I think that it's important to really get down to the nuance of this framework and this temporal map so we know exactly what we're reading. And knowing your own charts is very helpful so you know what area of life this is all happening in for you. So, and this is why personal readings are really where it's at. I can give you general forecasts, general reads, right? I can give like some sense of like, these are the trends, right, that people can expect, but it's really your own personal template that makes the most sense to you as a person. So, and this is why having a very seasoned and competent reader is really important, right? That it can't just be like a hobby necessarily, and reading for people, there's a lot that goes along with it. Anyway, Here we are. Mercury and Chiron today are in a conjunction at the same point of the new moon, right? Where the sun and Chiron were conjunct as well. So Mercury now, has been moving through Aries, right? So, there's a lot of impulsive, maybe there's a lot of angry communication, maybe there's a lot of courageous and bold speech as well, right? Impulsive, rash, hasty in terms of what we're communicating. Maybe our thoughts are just like at that kind of, that there's an electrical charge, right? That there is a spark that's happening, and maybe that's all it is, right? Maybe there's just lots of like mental sparks going anywhere, but there is a lot of anger. There's a lot of projection potentially, and so when Mercury moving through Aries then meets Chiron, just like the sun did, right? We're really, I feel like, verbalizing a lot of the woundedness that Chiron is representing for each of us, right? And can we rise above the situations that have failed? Can we find the lesson here and the healing that is actually the full theme of what Chiron represents? Can we find our own healing through either disappointment or some sort of event or some sort of potential creation, some way that we have tried to project ourselves in the world that like backfired or didn't go as planned, or facing disappointment or facing the disappointment of other people. That's a big part of this degree of Aries. So Mercury is here now at the same point of this new moon, kind of bringing our mind back to those intentions that maybe we set around the new moon as we're having the full moon present. The other thing that really sticks out to me about today, it's a smaller transit, but it really says a lot, which is now Venus is in Gemini, right? And so she went from Taurus, and now things are a little bit more, I don't want to say that they're lighter, it's just she's less possessive of ideas as she is things, right? That's what Venus in Taurus and in the second house can be very much like, this is mine, and be very like kind of anchored in that and feeling a sense of safety and familiarity with what is. So coming into Gemini, so thoughts are able to, communication is able to be more relational, right, and vice versa, right? We're more willing to communicate within our valued relationships. Ideas are going back and forth. There's more objective thinking about things that are valuable, things that are meaningful to us when we have Venus in Gemini, right? There's just more conversation. There's more interaction with people, and there's just more mental energy surrounding things that we value, right? Whether they be like material items, how we decorate our house, right? Because Venus really is about that kind of aestheticism and beauty and harmony. And so maybe that's also in our minds, that there's a sense of like balance and kind of balance and harmony in terms of the mental sphere as well. But the one thing that today is happening is that she's in this sextile, as you can see, this blue line here, right? This sextile with Saturn over in Aries, right? And these two positions, number one, Venus is in conjunction with Aldebaran. This is the left eye of the Taurus constellation, or the left eye of the bull. Okay, Aldebaran is also the watcher of the east, which is Archangel Michael. So there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of energy associated and focus associated on this particular degree, 9-10 degrees Gemini, because of its connection to Aldebaran, okay? And so this sextile over to Saturn in Aries, really representing in terms of Sabian symbol language, 10 degrees Aries is a teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images, right? It's basically like you can kind of abstract what has otherwise been something that you were emotionally invested in, right? Something that you literally took literally, and now this position of, there is a symbolic reference to this as opposed to a literal one. And Saturn can be a harsh mentor or teacher or authority figure. I guess I should put it that way, right? But the sextile with 10 degrees Gemini, which is a pioneer, like that comes into newly open lands. There is something very valuable and very grounding about this position of like, in front of us is new opportunity. There's fresh space in front of us, or a fresh mental landscape that we can move into, that is very much supported and anchored by a firm structure with Saturn and Aries. That's like, it doesn't, if you can see this or know this in a wider frame, a more abstract way, then everything that has been happening that has seemed contentious or difficult or disappointing or confusing or whatever has a new scope now, and we can step out of that past and into something new. That's a really I think very beneficial and positive type and transit today, something that will transform us. But we have to like take the initiative, right? We actually have to listen to the authority within us, which is that Saturn in Aries, in order to have the capacity to really step into and value the newly open lands, right? The pioneer stepping into newly open lands. That's where Venus conjunct Aldebaran in Gemini today. So, and there's a whole starseed thing around Aldebaran and what that represents as well. So there's the galactic layer to all of this, which has been very present. I mean, every new moon we've had for months has been in the last degrees of the sign, which are always galactic degrees. So, I mean, we know that overlay is happening with just about every lunar cycle that has been happening since I'm sure before the eclipse. So, all right, definitely since the eclipse, right? That last degree of Aquarius where we had that eclipse. So the full moon itself in Scorpio, I really want to break this down because it seems to me that with Mercury and Chiron coming into this conjunction with Venus and Aries or Venus and Saturn in that sextile, it's like we're mentally revisiting those wounds, that sense of woundedness, and our capacity to heal, and not only to face ourselves, but to face other people and exercise some true spiritual independence, right? That's what it takes. So, but we also have the capacity to come out of where we've been, see it as something symbolic, something as a training exercise, if you want to think about it that way, and move into new territory, right? Either in relationships, either in finances or resources, right? Venus rules all of these things. It's whatever is valuable to us. And then we have this full moon in Scorpio on May Day, on Beltane, right? And it is just on the heels of Pluto stationing retrograde, which it just becomes more intense, right? So the intensity of the transformative energy of Pluto, it's like, the demolition is happening. And so it's just pushing through its last bit right now before it kind of goes all fallow. And we have to just kind of sit with what has happened. And that's part of the retrograde cycle of Pluto. So we'll have until the fall to really sit on everything that has been happening, really consider it, really take stock of everything that's been destroyed, and know that this is the growing ground for newness, right? This full moon is very interesting because it really taps into our ability to imagine and to use that imagination as a corrective, and I think this full moon really highlighting and illuminating the highest version of what these relationships are going to yield, right? Because that's really Scorpio, and power can be any type of resource that is generated within the context of the relationship. So it could be profits from a business relationship. It could be just the money that's made from a business exchange. It can be the resources that are brought together in a legal marriage, right? You bring your resources together. I read an astrologer say something about how Scorpio in the 8th house is resources not earned. And I guess that technically could be it in terms, it's what you invest, and it's the yield on your investment. So sometimes that's trust, and sometimes that's betrayal, right? And the investment comes from like intimacy, for instance, right? So then you get kind of that sexual piece of Scorpio in the 8th house, because it's deep. It's the depth of feeling. And it's also the investment in our spiritual path as well. And this is the dark night of the soul territory. You have to go down deep into who you are, really investigate your shadow, and see that it's just as much part of the conversation as the light when you go into manifestation, whatever it is, right? And so the sun in Taurus is this young couple that is window shopping, right? They're visualizing, they're imagining what they could have, like what's available to, to the youthful ego. It's a fascination with the youthful ego with the products of its culture, right? It's an outward longing of the ego, right? It becomes aware, and I say ego like our personality, right? Our sense of self, longing for something, becoming aware of what it has to offer, right? And being molded by what we see, right? You go out window shopping and you're like, oh, this is what's there. This is what's available. It starts like, bringing up things of like, I like this, or I don't like this, or I would like this if it looked like this, you're being molded by what you see and by the prospects for that growth, right? So you're out window shopping. And it's your imagination that's the real corrective for the experience with the sun at 12 degrees Taurus. And so you're channeling your personal aspirations into, kind of like the socially acceptable grooves of the shared experience, right? It's very much visualizing the sun at 12 degrees Taurus. You're window shopping. What the full moon is showing us right now is how that's actually like how the fullness of the full dramatization of that imagination and that visualization and the way that energy is channeled, right? So 12 degrees of Scorpio is an official embassy ball, right? And so the idea that the relationship, whatever the relationship is, has been made hierarchical, it's institutionalized, you're meeting people at the highest possible level of interplay. So it's one thing to window shop, it's another to be in this like elite official kind of like gala of all of the people at the top of their culture, right? So the human imagination is the most essential, or it's the most effective, right? Your imagination is the most effective corrective for your allegiances, because you kind of see where everything is distributed, right? It's like social dramatization, right? This is the full ritualized display of power of these relationships, and it enables each person to know whether your loyalties are bringing you self-fulfillment, right? So it's the display itself, right? While the Sun in Taurus is the ego interacting with the display. The full moon is the display, and it shows if there's stability of the self as it's contributing to society and to the culture by wanting it, or is, you're going to question your loyalties. Is this bringing me what I want? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. This full moon is really highlighting and illuminating the display, the power display itself of what it is that we feel that we want, what we're fascinated by, what we're visualizing, right? What it is that we desire. And there's a lot of that energy in Taurus because it's just what is comfortable, right? What we know, right? Just like I said, the grooves that have already been there. So you're traveling the same pathway, but there's still a youthfulness to it because it's a young couple, right? The official embassy ball usually has people that are much more advanced in their age and certainly in their station and the full display of that power. And so depending on what it is you're visualizing, you're imagining, what it is you want, what it is you think you want, right? This full moon is demonstrating and really we feel it so strongly, like what is the nature of that actual display at its highest level. And I think that there are some there are some things that we all need to consider right now. And when we have to face, that which is outside of us, so we have this outward longing, for instance, and we have to face, is this actually going to yield the return that my soul is really wanting and looking for? And then we have a couple of weeks to really start deciding for ourselves, how we're going to address this, right? Are we going to, how are we going to face that, even if that disappointed audience from the new moon, even if that's a part of ourselves, right? Or it's the voice of the culture outside of you that's like, this is what you should want, and you were supposed to do this, right? We're not all meant to, live in that commonplace groove. You know what I mean? Some of us are, and some of us aren't. And so how we're dealing with that and the wounds surrounding that, I think, is what's happening right now. And I think a lot of people are going through things that they never planned for and they couldn't even conceptualize. And they are really facing, like, how am I going to really heal because of this? Not necessarily from what's happening, but as, healing from it. So, or a healing as a result of it. So this full moon is it's really highlighting, like, is this for me? Wow. This, is, and can I, is it worth it? Is it worth it to cater to those who can't understand what it is that you're doing? It may be. It just depends on what you are facing and, where your spiritual independence really, is kind of anchored. So, I will say, though, that the Catalyst membership readings, for the most part, are following a theme of, like, well, we've been kind of on this path for a while. And so, there are a lot of people that are like, yeah, this is all really intense, but I've been dealing with intensity for so long, like, I'm ready for it now. And even if it gets to a point where you're like, can I really handle this? Somebody the other day was like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I do fundamentally, down to it, really do agree with that. But my response was just like, yeah, but why does it have to be, like, literally within an inch of my sanity every time? Like, it's, but I guess that is where you draw the line of what you can and can't, quote unquote, handle. So, and everybody responds differently because of what they've already put out there. And there are lots of instances and examples right now where you can see where people they decided they weren't going to cross that threshold, that they didn't, that was one straw too much. And so that happened, and it happens a lot. And I suspect that it's going to continue happening. And it's just going to be really hard. So it's been really hard. That's the thing. It's been really hard. So again, steel yourselves, my friends, because take advantage of May to really ask those questions for yourself, especially because of the intensity of Pluto in its station to go retrograde is going to just be like, why does everything feel like it's getting bulldozed over right now? Because it feels like that. And I think it's really enhanced with this full moon in Scorpio right now. Okay, let's do a little play-by-play here and see where we're at. So I would say, if I had to, like, give an art, a story arc here over the next 2 weeks. So we talked about this full moon, Mercury and Chiron. So we're revisiting the new moon, like, in our heads, basically. Venus and Saturn in that sextile really just, kind of an authority anchoring us into like, hey, can you see this in a different way now, right? You were so invested personally in this thing. You were taking it literally and you were attached to it. Can you actually see it now and experience it in a more symbolic way and broaden that and abstract that a little bit? Because if you can, then there's a real chance that, these what really matters to you can walk into or move into new opportunity, right? So that's where it starts. And then, we move through a Sagittarius moon, and May 4th and May 5th, which is, coming the end of the weekend, coming into next week, especially, is going to be more challenges, right? Mars is going to square Jupiter, and Mercury is going to square Pluto on 5/5, by the way, and right before Pluto stations retrograde. And so, Mercury and Pluto together is always a lot of just really intense head trips in general. And now you have fixed energy, right? And we've had fixed energy. Sorry about that. It sat too long, and now it's got to make sure I'm not a bot. Here we go. So there's our Saturday, May 2nd. Okay, so here we go. The moon in Sagittarius, it's going to T-square the nodes. Let's see. I really want to look at the 4th and the 5th. There we go. So Mercury and Jupiter Mars and Jupiter are going to be in a square together. So this is like a tug of war. This is high tension between, especially Mars and Aries, right? It's very impulsive. It's very individualistic. And then you have this emotional, nurturing, family-focused priorities. And what's going to be really confusing, I think, about this is that Mars in Aries is going to be like, no, I'm going to fix everything by just, taking care of everybody that needs it, right? You're feeding the birds in the wintertime. It's the young girl that's feeding birds in winter. So it is very individualistic in terms of its action, and maybe is very impulsive, but it's going to seem like, no, I'm doing the right thing. I'm being very hospitable. When Jupiter in Cancer is like, the real nurturing and emotional cohesion comes from, giving voice to that which brings out that sentimentality within us, right? So you need to balance that personal ambition with your home life demands, and, you can just have to navigate the conflicts, right? It's intense, it's ego-driven because it's Mars and Aries, but Jupiter in Cancer is protective and expansive in an emotional way, right? The root system is getting more expansive and stabilizing even more. And so instead of acting on impulse, maybe you channel this energy into something calculated, something that secures the family, something that secures long-term goals, right? Instead of just kind of like as a one-off being like, I'm just going to give all my money away, or I'm going to take care of everybody around me. Maybe it's much more about the emotional nurturing that's going to have a lasting effect on things, right? And that's going to be on the 4th, and then right from there is the 5th, 5/5, with Mercury and Pluto in a fixed square. So more intense conversations. This can also spark that like truth-seeking thing where there's a demand for truth, right? Demanding the unveiling of secrets, of hidden information, especially when you have Pluto in Aquarius, because you're talking about societal shifts, you're talking about transformations in systems and technology, and Mercury in Taurus, right? It's going to be trying to bridge that gap, right? So there's mental tension, there's a sense of stubbornness of like, no, there's a way to overcome this, and I just feel like that this square is just going to be, again, power struggles, but also supports a lot of deep work, a lot of transformative work, profound understanding that can shift your long-term future-oriented goals, right? And I would say too that with that square and then Mars in a square to Jupiter, it's really gonna bring out it's just going to bring out the tension of some really intense things that are happening for people, right? And intense communication, intense conversations, right? Something that is beyond a personal ambition, right? Pluto in Aquarius has to do with the social systems, and we are really just acting in accordance to something transpersonal, but that's where the real power is coming from. Whew, boy, I just feel like coming out of the weekend into next week is just going to be bam, 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 right? And so again, taking the time with this full moon to really just let it wash over you and allow the feeling to be very present with you. You don't have to attach to it. You don't have to identify it as you. You just have to feel it and intuit it and know that your intuition, maybe there's dream work, maybe your subconscious is showing you the full display of that which you are kind of dreaming about and visualizing about and really attaching yourself to, because that's, the sun is our full expression. Next week is just going to be a lot. There's 2 squares and then Pluto stationing. So even leading up to the 6th is going to be just, it's going to be grinding. And a lot of intense back and forth and just feeling very unsettled. And I hate giving those types of readings, but it's, this is just what I'm seeing. And what day is this? The 5th, yeah. So you can see, again, the square with Mercury and Pluto. You can see the square with Jupiter and Mars is still very present. But also you can see that Mercury is coming into a favorable connection with the nodes of the moon, right? So that Draco energy that I had talked about in previous reports, and then we read on it for the Catalyst membership, which was an incredible reading. So there's definitely not only it, again, it kind of goes back to Venus and Saturn. Like if you can really see things from a new symbolic vantage point, then we have the confidence, I think, to step forward into new lands, pioneering new ideas and new ways of communicating with each other, new concepts. And this with Mercury too, with the nodes, it's like, if we can really just stand uncompromisingly in our truth at a soul level, then we are able to easily release the past and move towards our future by being able to kind of see it. That's the thing about this set of degrees here in Taurus, where Mercury is on the 5th into the 6th, which is, you're able to really kind of like see the whole picture. You're able to anticipate what's coming because you understand natural cycles. So that's the other thing too, is that there's plenty here to keep us like locked in to the fact that, things are coming back around. There is this sense of things coming to roost, that is for sure, but I don't think that's really going to be present as strongly until early June. So, all right, Pluto stations on the 6th, and then we have our 3rd quarter moon in Aquarius, so still some more very tense energy. But once we come out on the other side of that, of the 3rd quarter moon, and mostly the 3rd quarter moon, what we're going to find is things kind of lighten up just a little bit as we're coming into the last bit of the lunar cycle. And that's because you're going to see that Mercury and the Sun are going to come into a cazimi right before the new moon. And before that happens, each of them in turn are going to have a sextile with Jupiter. So this kind of brings I think the pressure down just a little bit with Jupiter and the Sun, Taurus and Cancer, and coming from Mercury and the Sun, and then those two come together, and then we have a new moon conjunct the Pleiades. So this is, again, I think very nurturing physically and emotionally, because you have Taurus and Cancer, and you have both of them sextile Jupiter. And I think, again, if we can really identify and mentally wrap our heads around like what's important to us, like really identifying what's important to us, the whole thing of like take what resonates and leave the rest type of thing. The sextile to Jupiter, it gives us a sense of emotional satisfaction. Like we can really perform that, if that makes sense. Because 21 degrees Cancer is an opera singer. And opera tends to be, a story, a musical story that reflects the times, right? The culture that it's performed in, or the language that it's written in, usually is like, this is the culture. And it's really showcasing, the essence of the culture. And the singer themselves often is, seen as the prima donna, right? And there is a certain amount of emotional satisfaction that you receive by being able to give voice to what is important in that culture, or what, roots that culture. We're talking about Cancer here. So when you can identify what truly is important to you and you can point it out, it allows you to be a clear channel and conduit and really give voice to those aspects of the culture that are most important to you. And there's a feedback, there's a positive feedback, there is a cohesion, right? There's a tightening of the roots through that process. And I do feel like that by the end of this lunar cycle, moving into the new moon on, I believe, is the 16th. I think it is the 16th. We're going to see a Taurus new moon conjunct to the Pleiades. And on the same day, we're going to see that Mars and Chiron are conjunct. So I think that that's going to be, it's really going to push out the last of the infection, if you know what I mean, right? We might have to cauterize the wound at that point with Mars and Chiron. But this new moon conjunct the Pleiades with Mercury, these last degrees of Taurus, I think is going to really highlight like how much authority we really do have in our environment, and how much we command, really truly command the world around us, right? That we have the capacity to be a fierce warrior. And that's 23 to 24 degrees of, or I'm sorry, yeah, where these two are conjunct, Mercury and the Sun, and then we play that role, right? We play that role. That's going to be the 16th of May. So that's going to be the new moon conjunct the Pleiades. All right, guys. My voice is starting to go. So I'm going to leave it right there. I know it's a lot, and it's still working itself out for me as well. Because I am very intuitive. Obviously, astrology is very much a left brain type of thing, but it actually functions a lot like music, where you're using both sides of the brain. And for all of the left brain, like, okay, these are the transits, these are the aspects, this is what it means. There's just so much nuance and interpretation of the actual message itself. And the thing is that the full moon is always that moment where the purpose is kind of clarified, for better or for worse. And I would say with Scorpio, that's definitely an 8th house type of energy. For better or for worse is certainly the catchphrase, because you're going down into the underworld, whether you like it or not. But remember, it's just a reflection, right? It's just a reflection. It's not you. It's not the wholeness of you, but it is a part of you, and it needs to be, for all of us, it needs to be integrated. So full moons are, we release and our purpose is clarified, and then we keep releasing. But we have to do it consciously, because at this point, the light of the moon starts to wane, and we have to take that awareness and objectively and consciously put it into practice. And it gets hard, especially once we get to the third quarter and everything leading up to it. So I would say this next week is going to continue to be very difficult. I walked in for my massage this morning, and my colleague was just like, so how's your May going? And I was like, just like everybody else's, you know what I mean? It's just been one thing after another. And I think we really have to be honest with ourselves about what it is we are putting our energy into and visualizing. And I think this full moon is going to give us that honest appraisal in all of its dark fullness. And then we're going to have our Pluto retrograde that's going to be like, okay, we'll spend the next 6 months or whatever now until October really assessing all of the social changes that have been happening and how that has affected you at the deepest level. And if you want to continue putting your energy into those things, it's just all there is to it. We all have to make that decision. So, my friends, thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. Sorry if it seems, a little bit all over the place, because I think that's where we all are right now. But sometimes it's the... Well, I pulled a card for somebody. I pulled a card for somebody recently, and the card was "Lest the Kelpie drag you down," and I was like, "Yeah, that is the full moon, right?" And a Kelpie is it's a fictitious or mythological like creature that lives in the bog or in the swamp. It's like Scottish, and that's what it do. It would drag people down, and that's the thing about a Scorpio full moon. Like if you let it drag you down, like it's really hard to get back out of there. So just keep that in mind as well, that you don't want to get dragged under. You want to just be able to see down into those still waters and get an honest reflection of what's happening without it like consuming you and enveloping your soul. No big deal. Anyway, my friends, thank you for being here. Please consider the May Day discount code, the flash sale. It's good until the 15th if you're really looking for a reading and you've just been kind of waiting for things to come down in price. That's an option. And certainly premium readings are on their way. All the things. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you. I'm going to move on with my day. I'm sure you're going to move on with yours. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.